First on Film and Entertainment, Alex first with you. Joining me, Gregory King. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning, Alex. Nice to talk to you again.
Now, look, before we go any further, I finished last week and mentioned our colleague, unfortunately, who passed away, whose name is Jane, and beautiful human being that she was. One person that I wanted to speak about that I didn't get the chance to was John Blackman's passing. And I wanted to acknowledge that because I dare say you and I both grew up watching John Blackman on Hey Hey at Saturday. I also worked with him at 3AW, and he was quite the personality. So he's a man who always treated me with a great deal of respect. Obviously, he enjoyed a fruitful career, both on radio and in television. He made an ill-fated move away from 3AW for a while, which not everybody agreed with, and in hindsight, maybe he wouldn't have done. But he was a loyal 3AW man to the very end. He was speaking to a lot of AW personalities, etc., etc. And I should declare that on occasions I am also on 3AW, but I've also worked with the ABC and a number of other radio stations. So I'm not being protective of one or another, but I am talking about what a great guy John Blackman was. What's your experience with him, even as a listener or watcher?
He had a quick wit and a wonderful sense of humour there, and he was an integral part of the Hey Hey Saturday family on those Saturday night shows there, with his little interjections, a sticky knee, and some of the comments from the side.
I feel it's very, very sad that we don't have anything on television at the moment, notwithstanding the comedic elements, but like the Rove interviews, etc., that also took place, and Don Lane and Bert Newton, etc., where the stars that come into this country, often movie stars, etc., where's their vehicle to appear? Maybe the morning television programs, maybe you've got the project, etc., but it's not as consistent as it once was. And I still believe that there's an audience for that sort of thing. It's just a question of tapping into it, but maybe it's too expensive. I'm not sure.
Probably is now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the changes that are taking place in media and the media landscape, quite significantly different. Of course, this week we hear about more retrenchments at commercial television and free-to-air TV. Very, very difficult thing to sustain. Very difficult. And even a number of the so-called reality programs, they cost so much to put to air that they're being pulled. Not that they're not getting ratings, but they're just too expensive and stations can't afford it. Having said all that...
The irony is, though, that when they first started, they thought that all these reality TV shows would be cheaper to produce than scripted dramas.
That's quite true. But I mean, I don't know. Do you watch anything like SAS or
SAS? No, those reality TV shows, I think they're just a waste of time.
Oh, okay. Well, until you've experienced them, it's a general judgment. But I think some are better than others. They're also, many of them, of course, are mired in controversy, and dare I say, in a broader sense, sex sells, and that's the reason that they do what they do. It's kind of like a guilty pleasure. I can honestly say I don't watch a lot, but I have watched Married at First Sight. There you go, I declare, and it's this morbid fascination. Call it what you will, but once you get hooked, you get hooked. And I suppose that's the same thing with whatever you do. I mean, I'm hooked on the mighty fighting Essendon football machine, aren't I, Gregory? So
we took to the almost obsessive.
Of course, I am upset. I'm obsessed, and I'm obsessed with seeing Carlton beaten. This is why I'm not in a happy place at the moment, Greg. And talking about happy place, yeah, you're not in exactly a happy place with your side either. But that's not new, is it?
But I wish I could play more like they did on Friday night against Brisbane.
I agree. They
lost that game in the first quarter. But yes. The rest of the game, they were playing catch-up, but they were a lot more aggressive, hard at the ball, fast running, and they kicked over 100 points for a change.
Yes, in fact, it was your highest score, wasn't it, for the year, and yet you were beaten by a higher score. So, and you were within 7 points. I watched that, and I thought, here's your run, and then that 50-metre penalty was awarded, and that was the end of the petty section, so to speak. Getting back to John Blackman, though, one of the things about him was his longevity in the media, because it's hard to constantly have a gig. And I was listening to an interview, I think it was late night, was it last Sunday night, with Simon Owens and and Philip Brady, and they were interviewing Daryl Summers, and they said the relationship sort of almost started in a matter of fact way, because he was this guy in a discombobulated voice in a booth, and it just sort of it started with a brief conversation. Suddenly there was an interjection from upstairs. I hope I'm representing this accurately, and then the voiceover man, I think it was Murray Tregoning, became involved, and soon it became legendary. And it must be very amusing if you're an overseas star suddenly appearing on a program and you get a wooden pole with a head on it and a bit of hair and a cap suddenly appearing in front of you. Can you imagine how a number of them would have thought, what the hell's going on here? That was part of the joy, because it was, it wasn't preempted. It just happened. And there was a bit of chaos about the show too. And we used to love it. It was such a popular program, and it lasted for such a long time because it started as an afternoon cartoon show, didn't it? Hey, it's Saturday. That's my recollection of it.
Saturday morning cartoon show hosted by Daryl Summers, yeah.
Yeah, which is so. I mean, look, TV's obviously changed irrevocably. Much now is on pay TV. Do you recall we talked about footy a moment ago? That they said, oh well, all football, all cricket, it'll always be on free to air. Of course, it's not anymore. If you want to watch every game, you can't tune into Channel 7 and watch every game. You can't. So you either have to subscribe to Foxtel or KO or one of these services if you're a footy nuff like you and I. So how many games of footy do you watch, or do you only watch your own team?
No, it depends on who's playing and what night and when they are playing, but I can't watch everything on over 4 or 5 days.
Do you subscribe to any of the services like Netflix, etc.?
No, I've got Netflix, but that's the only one I've got besides Foxtel.
And do you watch much or not?
No, not as much as I used to when lockdown was on.
Obviously you're working again, so it makes it working not remotely. The other aspect of all of this, though, is in terms of covering what we do, namely movies. There are so many good movies on streaming now, and they pay so much money, right? They really do pay a lot of money. I was speaking to somebody the other day who said, I've just seen the film of the year, and it's been downloaded, I think, from an American site rather than an Australian one, because he's got access to it. But it's one of those things that if you miss them, I don't think it'll be too long before a streaming service film wins Best Picture at the Oscars. I think that's where we're heading. And, I know that it's not what a lot of people want, but you can't prevent change. And that's, I think we were having this conversation, was it last week? We were talking about the potential, death of a number of cinemas because people aren't going out and watching movies. They're watching it in the privacy of their own homes, and they're doing that increasingly as televisions get bigger and brighter and better, and you can be there in your underwear if you want. Nobody's going to question it. It's a more convenient form of attending. Having said that, let's talk about a couple of movies. One that it took me a while to catch up with, but I'm really pleased I did, and I know you've seen it. It's called Radical, and you're on JAIR 88 FM. Greg King and Alex First with you. So there's a quote there from Albert Einstein which says, the only thing that interferes with my learning is my education. Now, you're an educationalist of many, many decades standing, Greg. I have this to say to you. I wish that my education was better and much more practical than it was. I just think that there were things that could have been taught that weren't, that would have helped on a day-to-day basis, whether it's about managing finances, whether it's about driving skills, whatever it might be. I just think that preparing for life, you could argue this is your parents' responsibility, but you're in a learning environment 5 days a week, and writing long dissertations and things of that nature that you do in an English class, and you're an English teacher. I question the real value in it. Learning how to create an email, short, sharp sentences, things of that nature, I would have found much more valuable. What do you think?
When you were at school, there was no such thing as the internet, so that is
no, that's true. No, but I'm talking
about more practical skills. Well, I did typing at school, which comes in handy.
Did you really? Well,
that's brilliant. And cooking. So those two skills have set me up for life.
I didn't. I think, Greg, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's terrific. See, I went to a school that was terrific when I started, and by the time I ended, it was a school that I don't think anybody wanted to go to. Was that my fault? Maybe. I don't know. No, I didn't. I did not enjoy my education at all. I found it tertiary more, but I did not enjoy school one little bit. High school, found it really. If you wanted to learn and somebody else around you didn't, you'd be bullied because you wanted to learn. It was a really toxic environment, which is most unfortunate. It was, as I say, it was a school that initially competed with Melbourne High and all those. It was a public school, but I didn't find it was. It gave me the skill set that I really wanted, and I got most of my socialisation outside school, quite frankly. So, do you think it's better now? I mean, you teach. Well, you teach in a school. So, do you think your school, without naming it, does a good job in terms of educating and preparing its students for the future?
Seems to be, but different schools offer different programs and all that. Some are more geared towards also vet courses and that kind of thing, which teach the kids more practical skills as well. The stuff that they used to do in the old tech school before they closed them.
No, wait, but Greg, why do you have to wait till the age of 17 to learn those skills?
I don't know, because a lot of kids sort of by the time of 15 are switched off school, and that's when the problem starts there, that they get distracted and bored.
Sure, but I don't...
Anyway, and Alex, let's talk about the movie instead of your experience at school, which is not the same as everyone else.
No, but again, this is we're on a podcast type situation as well as on a radio program, and part of it movies spark things in you. So when I was watching this movie, all these thoughts came to bear. That's the reason that we're talking about it, and I'm relating it to Albert Einstein's quote. I mean, right? The thing that interferes with his learning is his education. And look, so it is in a place in Mexico called Matamoros, and we're talking about 2012. It's a new idealistic teacher that's sort of by the name of Sergio, who arrives at an elementary school. So it's a poor neighborhood. Poverty's entrenched. Crime is rampant. Corruption, is everywhere. And in many cases, just to survive, children are dropping out of school very early, right? So basically, you're talking about school kids who are 12 years of age, finishing and not going any further because the parents can't afford not to have them work or helping them. So there's a set curriculum with a national test of knowledge based on that curriculum at the end of each year. And only Sergio stirs the pot. And he's the one who totally upends conventional thinking about how to teach children, how to get through to them. In that process, he tests the patience and the understanding of the school principal, whose name is Chuco, and he gets other teachers offside. He actually risks his career by going swimming against the tide. And his philosophy is simple. Get the children, and he teaches grade 6, engaged. Get them engaged to get them to want to learn so they can live up to their potential. And he does that by making education fun, by turning the playground into a classroom. But he does not have things all his own way. It's based on a true story, Radical. It runs for 126 minutes, 2 hours, 6 minutes, rated M, and it focuses on the character played by Sergio and his passion and conviction and the impact he has on those with whom he comes into contact. We also get a firm read on the head of the school and a handful of the teacher's 12-year-old students, 3 of them in particular. Now, among them is one called Paloma. She's quiet, she's whip smart, she lives with her father next to a rubbish tip, like a really horrible, large, smouldering mess of a rubbish dump. The father manages to barely scrape by collecting and selling scrap metal. And the daughter, Paloma, aspires to be an aerospace engineer on the way to becoming an astronaut.
And she can actually see across the border, because this town is on the border of Mexico. She can see across into one of the NASA space stations there, which adds to her frustration.
Absolutely, yep.
It's out of her reach, and basically she may never achieve it.
The second child is Lupe. the oldest in her family, responsible for looking after her younger siblings. And she has a fascination with philosophy. And basically, I think there are already 3 children in the family, and the mother is pregnant again, and Lupe will, for the third time, carry the workload of looking after the baby. Anyway, and then there's Nico. He's destined for a life of crime because, like his older brother, Cheppy, he's already entrenched with the gang. And suddenly, Nico's head is turned by this remarkable teacher. So this is the story of the children and the story of the teacher. And I don't know about you, but I was deeply moved by what I saw. I teared up several times. Did you, Greg, or not? Did you tear up?
No, I didn't tear up.
Really? I didn't know.
But I did feel empathy and moved by their stories.
Well, I thought it was full of joy and heartache. And it's a remarkable tale of fortitude in the face of overwhelming odds. And while the story itself is compelling, it's undoubtedly the characters that make the film as good as it is. And the guy, the teacher, is a revolutionary of sorts, hence the title, right? Radical. He's changed the status quo. He's made possible what, for all intents and purposes, had been impossible. So the actor who plays him, I thought he was terrific, really good. Eugenio Derbez is his name, Derbz. And there's a lot of humour and heart in the way he portrays the character, such a natural. The other one who I thought was really good-natured was the principal, really incredulous at what he was seeing. Is a sort of larger-than-life character played by Daniel Haddad. Again, I thought he was very, very strong. And
he's sort of very cynical and uppish at the start, but once he sees the results, he becomes a champion, Sergio, doesn't he?
He does, very much so. And look, I thought the children were terrific, salt of the earth, credible, each with their own personalities, distinct personalities, wide-eyed, pragmatic, but they dare to dream. And sure, as the premise unfolds, I don't know, when you say a little bit more about it, you might agree or disagree, but I could tell I was being manipulated to feel a certain way. But I totally bought into what was being sold. That's the beauty of this movie. And the photography by Matteo Londono, he's really done a great job. He's made the most of this evocative third world setting, or settings plural, that the film takes place in. It's based on an article, by the way, that was written in 2013 in Wired magazine by Joshua Davis, and that was titled "A Radical Way of Unleashing a Generation of Geniuses." I'm pleased they short-circuited that to radical. But that's the starting point for all of this. I thought it was a really superbly rendered script, really fine direction as well from Christopher Zala. And it shows how one person can make a difference for the greater good. So I thought it was a terrific film. What did you think, Greg?
Yeah. Look, cinema's given us a lot of inspiring teachers over the years who disregard the stuffy curriculum and set out to engage their students, encourage them to think for themselves and reach their potential. People like Robert Donat in his Oscar-winning performance in Goodbye, Mr. Chips, and to a lesser extent, Peter O'Toole in the 1969 musical remake. Of course, we had Sidney Poitier in To Serve with Love, Robin Williams, of course, in Dead Poets Society, Michelle Pfeiffer in Dangerous Minds, Edward James Olmos in Stand and Deliver, Hilary Swank in Freedom Riders, etc., and John Voight in Conrad. And now we get a Mexican variation on this theme with Radical. As you said, even though it is manipulative, you go along for the ride of this story of this teacher who turns up in this small, impoverished village rife with crime and corruption. And he even butts heads with the local head of the bureaucracy there, who has misappropriated funds intended to buy computers for the school, which gets him into trouble as well. When he gets there, he finds that most of the school kids there feel there's no escaping their impoverished circumstances. They've given up. Their parents don't value education at all. And this school has the unenviable reputation of being one of the worst performing schools in Mexico. The teachers are jaded, and all they do is prepare their students for that standardised, government-mandated national exam at the end of the year. But Sergio comes along, upends the judicial curriculum, and instead inspires his kids to think for themselves, empowers them to follow their own interests, and they become more engaged with the process of learning and discovering things for themselves. And we gain insight into, as you pointed out, 3 of these pupils there, and we become invested in their fates. Paloma, who has a passion for maths and science, but who looks like she's going to be forced to run the local landfill from her father. Lupe, as you said, who's interested in philosophy, borrows books in the library to read at home, but she's been forced to stay at home and look after a newborn baby sister. And Nico seems headed for a life of crime with the local drug unit until he finds himself inspired by Sergio's unorthodox approach. The film does go into some dark areas at times there, a little bit grim, and the violence of the streets comes alive there.
But that's what gives it real
power.
And it's power. Ultimately, if it was a walk in the park, it wouldn't be the movie that it is.
No.
And basically, not everything works out perfectly. I mean, that's just and unfortunately, that's reality. And that's what
That's the reality of the setting where the film is set. Yeah. But it's written and directed by Chris Rosella, who's a New York-based filmmaker who's filmed lots of episodes of the Law and Order TV franchise. The script is both insightful and moving, but as you said, it is also somewhat manipulative, and it does follow a bit of a formula for this subgenre there. But it's a real crowd pleaser.
Greg, we're dying slowly, right?
It's a real crowd pleaser, though, I thought, here. And as you said, the performances are great. Jabez comes across like a Mexican John Keating as Sergio there. He's well cast in the role as a dedicated and empathetic teacher. He brings passion, charm, and humour to his performance there. Hannah was also solid as the by-the-book principal. And the young students are brought to life by a number of newcomers and non-professionals, many of them in their first ever film role, who bring authenticity to their roles.
Did you like the kids? Did you think the kids were as good as I thought they were?
Yep, I thought the three main ones were really good. And at the end of the film, we learn about what became of Paloma, and her story is truly inspirational.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, bear in mind that this is still happening. This is not the teacher's still apparently at the school, which sort of gives it even greater cogency. So, what are you going to give this terrific movie, and encourage people to go along and see Radical?
I'm going to give it 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10. So, yeah, it's one of the better movies of the year, without any question. I've really loved it. Now, another one on JAir 88 FM, listen 24 hours a day. You've got all sorts of hopefully intelligent programming and got good music as well. And if you want to subscribe, $54, go to j-air.com.au, and we'd love to get the money because it keeps the community radio station running. But Inside Out 2. Now, okay, I remember the original, and I thought, what a great film, because that won an Oscar for Best Animated Feature, didn't it, back in 2015? So it was a really interesting movie about emotions, and this is sort of continuing the same trajectory. You've got the emotions that were apparent in Inside Out, and this is a sort of Disney feature film. You've got joy, fear, anger, disgust, and sadness. So they were there originally and in the movie 9 years ago. So all of them are back along with a new set. And that new set, anxiety, envy, embarrassment, something called ennui, E-N-N-U-I, and even nostalgia puts in an appearance. So 5 becomes 10. So the key character is Riley Anderson. She's the one who was featured in the original. She's now 13. And so it is that a red light goes off at headquarters being, if you like, her brain, which undergoes a sudden demolition. And the original set of emotions are shocked with the unexpected arrival of, what shall we call them, rogue emotions, Greg. And that's when anxiety, envy, embarrassment, and ennui come to the fore. And as I mentioned, nostalgia.
It's pronounced ennui, Alex.
On what is it?
Ennui. It's a French word.
That's right. They make a point of it. Yeah, there you go. It was easier for me to say ennui because it looks like ennui, but ennui, whatever you said. Anyway.
Ennui.
And it's called wee wee, isn't it, at some point? Anyway, this marks the onset, because Riley being 13, of puberty for her. And that also throws Riley's parents into a state of confusion because, basically they're no longer the flavour of the month, and she pushes back and she throws tantrums, and, that's what it's all about. And I suppose that's where it's true to life. Puberty can bring with it all sorts of difficulties for parents as well as those experiencing that particular phase of their lives. So Riley and her two best friends, Bree and Grace, are good ice hockey players, and they are, at short notice, invited to participate in an ice hockey camp, which serves as a tryout for the all-conquering high school ice hockey team. And Riley's rather starstruck when she gets to the camp and she meets the team's star player called Val Ortiz. And Riley's faced with a rather difficult choice of trying to curry favour with Val and with her teammates, or sticking by her school friends. So anxiety muscles in on Joy's territory. I mean, Joy was the biggest emotion that was apparent in the first one. And anxiety muscles in now, adopting a win-at-all-costs mentality, which will see all the old emotions shunted into a vault. So things go rather skew-if, and while the old emotions scramble to get back to her, Riley's left to try to rediscover her true self. She's basically a pretty nice person. So like the original, this one's pretty clever. It's colourful and it's comedic, and there are valuable life lessons in play, but this isn't sort of shoved down your throat. It's just the way that the movie unfolds. There are some beaut one-liners, and each of the characters I thought was very well crafted. So you've got distinct personalities that are allowed to shine through. So you've got from uptight to cynical, from good-natured to harried, and collectively they make up Riley Anderson, this 13-year-old who, for all her inherent goodness, does not always do the right thing. That's the nature of human beings, of course. So her traditional emotions' grand adventure also sees them interact with, I counted 4 characters. Greg, you might be able to fill me in if you could see any more. There was Bluffy, Bloofy, character from Riley's favourite television show in her childhood. And then there's a deep-seated purse with a bag full of tricks called Pouchy. And Lance Slashblade, a heroic video game character whom Riley had a crush on when she was younger. And I don't remember, would you remember the name of the hulking, shadowy figure? I think Big Dark Secret? Was that, can you remember or not really?
Not really, no.
Okay. You know at the very end of the movie, you stayed till the end with the credits? And that was Big Dark Secret. Anyway, that's what I reckon it was. In terms of voice talent, Amy Poehler returns in the key role of Joy, and her adversary is Maya Hawke as Anxiety. And then you've got Kensington Talman cast as the 13-year-old girl. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was wholesome and quite triumphant as a sequel for Disney. What did you think of Inside Out 2, PG rated 94 minutes?
They're certainly very colourful, and perhaps an emotional punch by the end of it there. And I like the fact that they've actually moved on a little bit from the original to now explore teenage emotions such as angst and confusion, embarrassment and all that, and which gives it a new different direction there and allows for these new characters you've talked in. But the film is still full of how the mind works, with lots of puns there. I mean, we've got this time stream of consciousness and sarcasm, which I loved. You've got to see the film to get that one. But yeah, the characters are quite bright and intelligent there. Of course, Joy is the feisty one there, trying to keep control of Joy's emotions and not let it get overrun by anxiety and all that kind of thing, which is more of a crippling emotion there. The animation is superb, as Pixar always do there, and it's got some nice moral messages there. And like a lot of Pixar stuff, even though it's a film aimed at kids, a lot of the humour is still aimed at adults there who will enjoy it as much as the kids, I think.
Well, do you think I mean, you enjoyed the original, did you not? You liked it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering, 9 years have gone by. The kids that saw it then have grown up. This has got a PG rating. Do you think this will appeal? Like, you could see this without having seen the original. I reckon you could without any problem at all. But are most of the people who are going to go and see this movie those that saw the original, or is it going to be a new generation? Because, I mean, 9 years is half a generation.
Yeah, but a lot of people who saw the original are going to see it now, and they've aged a little bit too, so they'll probably appreciate how the character of Riley has changed and grown and developed and matured, or not.
Do you remember how old she was in the first one? Was it? I thought it was only a couple of years previous, but maybe.
Yeah, she's just turned 13, so the other film was, 5 years ago?
No, the other film was 2015. But I'm wondering, in terms of the characterization, I thought, if I'm not mistaken, she was only a couple of years younger, but maybe, I don't know. I haven't checked that out, so I hope I'm not telling a pork pie. Maybe I'm now Googling how old was the girl in Inside Out. How old was the girl in Inside Out? For some reason, I seem to think the year that age 11 is what stands out in my mind. You probably don't remember, do you? There you go. Yeah, I'm right. Based on if we believe the Google, she was an 11-year-old girl, right? So only affected 12 by the end of the film. So this sort of really does carry on, and it carries on most effectively from Inside Out. What else would you have to say about the film, Greg?
Oh, see, I think I've said it all.
You've said it all. Well, okay. So if you're going to give it a score out of 10, Inside Out 2, do you remember what you gave the original, or you don't?
No, I can't remember.
I gave the original an 8, and so I'm giving this a 7.5. What about you?
6.5 to 7.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Well, look, sequels don't always work, as we know that. But for example, we're seeing Despicable Me 4, and that's franchise carried on quite effectively. I think it's the quirky nature of those characters, though, that sort of make.
There've also been several Minion shorts too, which keep the interest going.
Yeah, exactly. Look, it's fantastic when you go along and see effectively a cartoon. I'm not trying to sort of make that a negative, but a cartoon, and you think, wow, this is really special. This has got something in it for adults as well as children. It's a family type environment. That's certainly how I see Inside Out 2. Greg, did you ever see or read the book The Woman in Black?
No.
No? You know what the longest running stage show in the UK is, and in the world? Mousetrap, yeah, which is continues, etc., etc. And just this is without question, without notice. So that's by far the longest running stage show. Do you know what the longest running musicals would be in the West End?
The opera.
Yeah, that's one of them. So if I Google longest running stage shows in the UK, this is very, very good radio when I'm Googling, isn't it?
It is. This is called research you should do before.
I did in fact do this beforehand, but I thought I'd do it.
Make it sound more dramatic. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, dramatic pauses and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, there's 2 musicals that are long running that have been going for 10,000 or more shows each. Les Miserables is the one that stood. I remember seeing when I first saw that, I thought, my God, it's the best musical I've ever seen, and it still remains up there, absolutely magnificent. And the Phantom of the Opera being the other. So they're the 2. So the Mousetrap's number 1. Apparently, Les Mis is number 2. Phantom of the Opera number 3 overall, if you including musical theatre in theatre. But if you're just doing straight theatre, then The Woman in Black is the second longest running. In fact, it now finished in the West End, and I think it's opened somewhere else in the UK. But it's no neatly packaged fairy story. I mean, a lot of fairy stories are dark anyway, aren't they? I mean, you think about
a lot of the original fairy tales were, yes.
Yeah, I kind of it always amuses me that a lot of them were written by the brothers Grimm, not Grimm spelt with 1 M but 2, but there's something prosaic about that. Anyway, Woman in Black is on at the Athenaeum Theatre. It's doing an Australian tour at the moment. It's got some pretty well-known names in it that you would probably have heard of, Greg, John Waters being one of them. And he was in an earlier production, I think, going back to 2006 in Australia in this. But anyway, having said that, Daniel McPherson is the other one. So it's effectively a 2 or 3-hander, and I'll explain that in a moment when I say 2 or 3-hander. But it's a rather dark tale of despair and revenge. And it's kind of interesting because you've got The Woman in Black playing and now at the Athenaeum Theatre. And, of course, you've got Sunset Boulevard, which is on at the Princess Theatre. And both of them are reasonably, very dark, in terms of no nice, neat, happy endings and so forth. I like that. I like
the Sunset Boulevard show is going to close early because it's been getting bad reviews.
But yeah, well, the issue with it, I can't remember whether you were wrong when we were talking about it, Greg. The problem with it, as I see it, it's a really good show. I like the darkness. I don't have any problem with it at all. But having Sarah Brightman's got a terrific voice, but she plays it operatically, and I didn't want it operatically. I wanted it to be played as musical theatre, and I was different. Whilst she pronounces words very, very carefully when she's speaking, when you're singing in operatic tones, it's often difficult to discern what she's actually singing. And I struggled with that because and as I say, I'm not criticising her performance per se, but I'm wondering why it was played operatically. I remember seeing Deborah Byrne in it and thinking, wow, this was going back, 28 years ago, and thought it was a terrific show. So yeah, they've cut out performances, and they've been selling. I don't know whether they would have done this anyway, but they've been selling tickets at lower than face value prices and encouraging people to come along. I'm saddened by the fact that it isn't doing well, because I like the fact that it's not a straightforward, happy-go-lucky musical. Nevertheless, getting back to The Woman in Black, talking about despair and revenge, this concerns a man driven to tell his truth after the death of an elderly, reclusive widow called Mrs. Alice Drablow, Drablow. And the person who wants to unload is Arthur Kipps, and he's the character that John Waters plays. And he's desperate to unburden himself, to free himself. Anyway, he wants to tell his tale of woe, but he has no elocution skills. So in sort of a meta-type association here, he engages an actor, meta being META, he engages an actor, played by Daniel McPherson, to help him to basically get the best out of the words that he's penned. And it's had to be cut back as well, because if you read every word, it would be a 5-hour play. So anyway, this is only 100 minutes, including plus an interval of 20 minutes. So anyway, the actor is the one who eventually plays the John Waters character of Arthur Kipps. So basically, they turn the tables. So if you like, the actor plays a young Kipps, and the older Kipps in John Waters fills every other character role in this piece, and he also narrates the play. So the young Kipps is a lawyer. He travels to a fictitious village on the northeast coast of England known as Crithen Gifford. It's not, it's a, as I say, made up. It's sort of marsh country, and he travels there to sort out Mrs. Drablow's affairs. There are lots of private papers to go through, and the task is particularly onerous. But that's not the half of it, Greg. And it's while attending the funeral, Mrs. Drablow's funeral, that the young Kipps first sets eyes on a ghostly figure, which we'll call the Woman in Black. It's a woman in black, obviously dressed head to toe. So it's one that he'll continue to encounter, and it'll haunt him as he travels to the now dead widow's home, which is known as Eelmarsh House. So assistance is in short supply, even though young Kipps could really do with it, and it becomes quite clear that locals don't want anything to do with Eelmarsh House. So while carrying out his duty in isolation, he's got he's got a dog as a companion, and this is one of the beauties of this play. You don't actually see the dog, Greg, but all the overtures are made. Come here, little dog. No, come here. Oh, all of this done without seeing the dog. That's the only spoiler I'm going to put into this, but it was really, really clever. So young Kipps hears rather strange sounds, and again he confronts the spirit, the apparition. So it's left to him to try to figure out what's going on and why the locals are so spooked. And it's going to lead him to uncover a shocking tale of death and anguish that dates back nearly 60 years. So this has been adapted for the stage by Stephen Mallatrat from a 1983 book by Susan Hill. Do you like sort of ghost tales? Because I reckon you should read it if you do. It's well worth reading. Look, a single word to sum up this ghost story, it's atmospheric. So do you like ghost stories, Greg, or not?
I read a few horror stories, yes.
Yeah, well, I reckon you should.
Some Stephen King stuff, yeah.
Yeah, well, I reckon you should read this one. It's not Stephen King, but it's a very popular book. Anyway, the acting, of course, is of critical importance, as it always is, but there are a few theatrical pieces I can think of where sound and lighting would be more important. And both are done really well. Shadows, of course, add to the foreboding mood here. And in terms of sound, I'm not just talking about the things that go bump in the night. There are certainly those, but also natural street noise and much more. And the blend works really well, aided by rather austere but redolent staging and props. And in terms of the script, it's what I'd call a slow burn. The build-up, the establishing just how Mr. Kip's chilling tale will be told, that takes time. There's sort of about 10 or 15 minutes of mucking around at the start where, again, it's funny, but you sort of, the piece really ignites once we get to the paranormal. And the scares, well, you've got sudden loud sound, you've got the appearance of the apparition, you've got screams, you've got squeals, and it's done well. It's done very well. It really comes into its own in Act 2 as the narrative is developed and the true horror in the storytelling is revealed. The two stars of the piece, John Waters and Daniel McPherson, they're really strong. They milk the material for all it's worth, not missing a beat. And it's really quite amusing to watch John Waters. Imagine there'd be, I can't remember what was the film where the film is distinguished, in this case, the theatrical performance is distinguished by an actor playing bad acting. You know what I'm saying? Where he's actually, in this case, John Waters' character as the elderly Arthur Kipps struggles to sort of basically deliver any of his lines with any oomph, right? No get up and go. It's really, and he did this and he did that. It sounds really wooden. Do you remember off the top the movie where I'm just trying to think of where, was it Meryl Streep? I just can't remember the name of the film where she plays a bad actor or whatever.
So she played a bad singer.
A bad singer, that's one. Yeah, bad singer. Okay, so do you recall the movie? I can't remember. Anyway.
Tree bang a name, but I'll look it up while you talk.
You look it up while I'm talking about this. But yeah, so it was really funny to watch it. And then you contrast that with the fine job he does inhabiting several characters as the production unfolds. And McPherson is the enthusiast, the driving force here, quickly gets stuck into his role, lets it run. So the haunting nature of the woman in black is apparent throughout, gives it bite. There's no question about that. And it's on at the Athenaeum. You've got a little bit of time to see it. 6th of July it finishes, and it's doing a tour. It's already been in a couple of cities. It's sort of been in Brisbane, and it's been in Toowoomba, been in Adelaide and Perth, so more than a couple. And it then moves through Canberra, Wollongong and Newcastle before finishing at the Theatre Royal in Sydney, starting at the end of July and moving through to August. But we can see it right here at the Athenaeum Theatre.
That film you're thinking of, Florence Foster Jenkins.
Very good. Thank you, Greg. That's terrific. No, it's good to know. So, yeah, The Woman in Black is well worth catching if you are into things that go bump in the night. Look, there are some jump out of your seat moments, but not many. They're more, it's fascinating staging. And, yeah, there are some people, my wife was sitting with her hands over her ears, waiting, when you're waiting in a movie or a horror film or whatever for something to happen. I mean, look, one of the scariest things that I've ever done is there was I can't remember what the name of it was now either, but there were 4 shipping containers in Chinatown in Melbourne, and you could get into these shipping containers where it was all about sound and light and so forth, but it was pitch. It was absolutely pitch black. And what is it? Why do you think, and you're somebody who reads a lot of horror and watches a lot of horror movies, what is it why do people get excited about being scared? What is it? Why are we humans built this way? I don't know whether you've got an answer, but what's your theory?
Maybe just occasionally it's a jolt out of your normal routine of life, and because it's on the stage or on the screen, it's not real. So you can sort of experience it.
Well, I suppose it's the thrill. Like, you've also got the thrill seekers. Some people are the thrill seekers, and others are, like to be scared out of their wits. It's interesting. I mean, night terrors and nightmares are very real for people, and you wake up from one of those, and you really at times. I'm sure it's happened to all of us. I wonder. I don't know the physiology of it, but how does the human mind work? Is it a processing mechanism? It's quite fascinating to sort of think about this with a little bit more depth. Having said all of that, yeah, if you're into that sort of genre, why not? Why not attend? I also wanted to. I've seen some amazing things, and unfortunately, it's now over. But the Rising Festival, which has been on from the 1st until the 16th of this month, it's always on in June. Gee, there's been some good stuff, Greg. I don't think you've partaken in any of it, but it's always difficult to know what to attend. And now I want to talk to you about this because there are a couple of really interesting things, and you maybe want to be, this goes on for a little bit longer. This goes on till the 23rd, but was part of Rising. Daniel Kitson collaborator. Okay? So now, I suppose, have you ever wanted to be, you're an English teacher, but have you ever wanted to be a voiceover talent or an actor? Has that ever crossed your mind?
No.
No? Well, look, a lot of people, you look at the money that can be made and people say, yeah, it'd be really good. Well, here's your chance. Although the person involved, Daniel Kitson, would hate me for saying so, because he makes his view of actors clear in this show. Or I suppose you can even question whether that really is his view or the view that he puts out there. But anyway, he's a British comedian. He's written a really off-the-wall script, Greg, in which he argues with and provokes the audience, all of whom play a part in the shenanigans. And there's a lot of laughter. So anyway, the South Bank Theatre, right, alongside the Art Centre. Okay, so you go in there. It's the smaller theatre, the Lula, and it's quite an interesting thing because it's theatre in the round. It's actually in the square, but there's, if you like, bleacher seating. It's not very deep, but 4 or 5 deep in each four areas, right, to make up the square. And when you get in there and you sit down, in the middle of the room, there's a sort of, if you like, the stage area, which is just the floor. There are hundreds and hundreds of pieces of paper lined up on 4 sides. And you're thinking, what the heck's going on here? Well, basically, they are scripts, Greg. All right? So Daniel Kitson has basically prepared 169 speaking parts in 46 pages of text. Now, as a patron, you either can choose a speaking role or a non-speaking role. And the night we attended, it's only the smaller theatre, there were 181 people there. So most people take speaking parts. And he hands out copies of the script, which you leave behind as you exit. And basically, it's quite random. So they're numbered, sort of 1 to 169, and you just pass them along the aisle. And you might get a single word, you might get a sentence, you might get series of sentences or proclamations or exclamations, or you could choose a non-speaking part. And even if you choose a non-speaking part, you're still invited to engage in a bout or two of booing at various junctures. So the script's sort of A4 size, and you've got a tab which indicates the start of the role that you're asked to play, and then what you're asked to say is highlighted in yellow, and then you've got a red dot that marks the end of your part. So it's quite easy, it's quite straightforward. Now, the beauty of the writing is that it speaks to the lead up to, well, who knows what. We never actually get there, Greg, because basically it sets out the rules of engagement and invites people to challenge what's been said. And there are plenty of challenges. So whatever the show proper could have been remains a bit of a mystery, or a lot of a mystery. And of course, that's the whole point. The interjections, the retorts are the show. And you're interacting with Daniel Kitson throughout the entirety of the extended reading. And naturally, his lines are the most pointed and the largest. So, and I've got to say, one lucky audience member, known as Keith, also has a large part to play and verbally jousts with Daniel right throughout this performance. So Daniel is forever defending his territory, sometimes quite forcefully, and always being very physically expressive. So it's a very funny and extremely clever script, and it was written, Daniel Kitson collaborator, to be performed in the round as it is, and it's tweaked from one venue to another. Because obviously if he's playing it in England, there'll be some different references to what there may be here in Australia. And it also contains directions for us, the great unwashed, the participants. So you might get a square bracket saying sarcastic, So, right, you're delivering it in a particular style, or raises hand. So everything's laid out on a platter. But then there's some ad-libbing as well, which generates even more amusement. And part of the joy is in the contrarian position that Daniel's built into the prose, which makes it clear now get this, he's not a fan of audience participation. This is all about audience participation. He's not a fan of plays. Well, this is a play. And he's not a fan of stand-up comedy. Well, this is stand-up comedy. So that's the whole point. Obviously, he's taking the P1SS out of things. A great deal of fun to be had over an hour and 10 minutes. He's effectively using us, Daniel Kitson, to have an argument with himself. So, the audience quickly get into the rhythm of the work. There's lots of smiles on faces throughout. That speaks volumes. And Kitson himself, well, he's quite the thespian. He's an agitator as well. And don't we just love him for it? It's quite I've never seen anything like it. But you basically pay I think it's $25, Greg, so it's not too expensive, plus $5.90 booking fee. It's you imagine going into a play that you're paying to be part of. That's what you do at Daniel Kitson Collaborator, even though he doesn't want to call it a play. Does that sound exciting? I reckon it was very exciting.
Fair.
What do you think?
It's your own.
Oh, Gregory. Oh, don't be a stick in the mud, my friend. So that was really special. I thought, wow, that's really a bit different, and nothing wrong with that, right? So that was that one. Now we don't have time. Maybe next week we can go into a few of the other movies that open this week, and I think that'll also give you an opportunity to see them as well, Greg. So amongst those that I wouldn't mind talking about is the new Russell Crowe movie, The Exorcism. Well, was it last year that Russell Crowe played a priest in a movie? I think it was last year. So
the Pope's Exorcist. That's
right. So he's done 2 Exorcism. I'm not sure whether he did them back to back or whether they're just released in quick succession. So I don't know why, but these are the scripts that he's offered. And the other one the other thing that I should mention is the Spanish Film Festival is now on, and that is well worth catching up with. I caught up with the centerpiece to that, which is really worth sort of seeing, The Teacher Who Promised the Sea, and it basically turns back the clock to the horrors of the murderous Franco regime with a highly personal search back in 2010, and it's based on fact. Now, it's a very interesting, quite a disturbing story, but one that I would encourage people to go along and see. That's The Teacher Who Promised the Sea. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention that one of our colleagues, Peter Krause, who's regularly on this show, is sort of going through a little bit, and we hope to have him back very, very soon. And we're just sending out our best wishes to Peter, let's hope that all will be righted in very short time. And we know how much he loves films and how much he contributes to this program. So I just wanted to say that. Greg, I wish you a very good week. I hope that that the kids don't give you too much grief. When's the next school holidays? That's my question to you.
2 weeks away.
Are you counting down the days?
Yep.
Okay. Well, listen, you enjoy the week. Be kind to one another. Hopefully the kids don't give you, as I say, too much grief. And we'll catch you next week on First on Film and Entertainment.